For somebody here in Woodstock, Georgia, what exactly is condo insurance and why do people need it if the HOA already has a master policy?
So condo insurance is basically the same thing as home insurance, right? Home insurance is going to cover the entirety of your property, right? When you have a condo, right? Let's say you're living in like an apartment style condo, right? Or a hotel style. You're only responsible for like your walls in. You're not going to cover someone else's stuff. You're not going to cover someone else's roof. You're going to cover your things. So if you're in an apartment style condo, you may not even have a roof. You just have a unit above you, a unit below you, and to the sides of you, right? But it is your dwelling. So condo insurance covers the inside of your stuff. The master policy the HOA has is going to cover everything that you don't. So they're going to cover, let's say it's more of a townhouse, right? They're going to cover the roof. They're going to cover the siding. They're going to cover the whole, you have 12 units on one block.
Speaking of that, we saw a lot of townhome communities here, right?
Especially down the road.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but you're not going to cover someone else's things. It's their property. You own your dwelling, but they technically own the structure it's in. So if they own it, they insure it. You're not going to insure something that's not yours.
Now, when you say inside the walls here in Woodstock, what does that really include for most condo owners?
So it's going to include almost everything that a home insurance policy does. So same thing, it's going to cover liability, loss of use. It's going to cover if anybody gets hurt on your property. It's going to cover your belongings the same way. The biggest difference is that you're not covering the outside. You are responsible for everything on the inside, and that's really it. That's what.
So what about the piping?
Piping is all you.
Really?
Yeah. If you have an HOA, they're going to cover the physical siding. Walls in is all you. So like, here's the outside of the building, touching wind, rain, everything like that. This is you, and you have your piping and stuff like that. Depending on what your master policy says, because some of them will cover certain, beyond what you would think. But piping and anything bursting or,
so then,
flooding your house.
I have a really good question off of that then. So like, say you're wall to wall with another condo. It's like this happened when I lived in California. Like you're wall to wall with the next house, right? And a pipe burst. Well, whose responsibility is it then?
It depends on what the master policy says, because the master policy could be responsible for in between the units.
Okay.
If there's no piping in certain areas, they could just flat out say that. It all depends on what the master policy is going to dictate and the terms it has on what's going to cover and what's not going to cover. And then what's on the person who owns it to cover.
Okay. What are the biggest must-have coverages in a condo insurance policy for Woodstock, Georgia?
Three biggest things you need to have is number one, liability, because if you're sharing a wall or sharing a roof or a floor with someone and something happens, claim happens and you damage their stuff, it's on you. Number two is making sure that you have enough coverage for your things. Granted, you're not covering the outside of the home, but you're still responsible for the inside. If you only have $50,000 to cover your 3-story townhouse for the inside and there's a fire, sure, they're going to build the box to put your stuff in, but now you only have a square. You have no kitchen, you have no sink, you have no bathtubs, no bedrooms. That's all for you to cover. So, and then the third one's going to be the dwelling, the liability, and then making sure that you have, making sure your deductible is something you can afford.
What are the most common mistakes with condo insurance in Woodstock, Georgia that you see all the time?
Misunderstanding personal property, misunderstanding the dwelling coverage they need. Most people think they can cheap out on a policy because the master policy is going to cover the big things, and nothing's ever going to happen. Water is one of the biggest claims on condos.
When you say master policy, you're talking about like the HOA's policy, right?
Yeah, the HOA master policy, yeah.
So speaking of that,
on that,
if one of the bigger mistakes then would probably be, not reviewing the master policy, right? Do y'all do that here, or?
We can only review what you send to us.
Okay.
We can speak about it, we can talk about it, but it's limited to what you know about your own. This is your policy, your home, your stuff. It is your responsibility to make sure that it's covered correctly for what you know, but we can only go off what you tell us. So we're going to do our best to pick your brain and make sure that we understand completely what we need to do to cover our bases for you on your behalf. But
do you ever request the copy of the master policy just to make sure that the client is covered?
Yeah, they email it, they bring it in. I mean, sometimes this page is long, so they don't want to read it. We'll read it for you. I've had people send me 45-page descriptions, and you just have to pick out certain things, making sure that you have all your bases covered to make sure there's no gaps.
Now, in Woodstock, Georgia, how do you determine the right amount of personal property coverage?
So in Woodstock, it's a better area. People can have more things. I said before, once they're here, they stay for a long time. So you're going to accumulate a lot of things. And I've mentioned before, going through once a year and doing an inventory of what you have, number one. Number two, rule of thumb, I always tell people is if you own the area, you're going to be there longer. You're going to get more things. So for every 1,000 square feet, we recommend about $30,000 of coverage.
I'm assuming you'll have some of this here too. I know we do here in Houston where, you have a condo, but then you have like a detached like garage downstairs or something. Like how does that get covered?
It all gets taken into account whenever we're building the policy for you. Okay. So we'll ask, if you have let's say you're a townhouse just on a basement, right? Or just on a slab, no basement, nothing like that. We're not going to take that into account for our estimations on how to cover your stuff. So it's very thorough on what your home is built, how it's taken into account, age of your stuff on.
Yeah, so like say like you pull in and like say you have a row of townhomes, but behind it is the garages. So
like right here.
Yeah, so like it's completely separate. It's like across the parking lot. Is that still covered or is that like a separate renter's policy?
So if you have a garage that you park in, it really needs to be dictated on who owns it. Is that your garage? Because it's separate from the actual dwelling itself.
Right, so it's
do you own
condo,
it or does the HOA own it? If it's part of your condo, it's yours.
Even if it's detached?
If it's part of your condo physically, you walk, you drive in.
Those two, where you drive in and you walk up a stairs.
There's your first floor.
Right.
Right, or you have stairs going up to your first floor door.
Right.
But if it's a separate unit, it's all in the HOA description on who owns it. If it's theirs and you're renting it, you pay a fee every month to use it. Or if it's physically yours, that would
depend on the master policy.
It would depend on the master policy, but that's just increasing your dwelling coverage.
Okay.
Specifically. But we don't see many in Woodstock, there's not many detached garages like that.
Okay.
It's either going to be full parking decks, or you're going to have the garage built into the townhouse itself.
Like the bottom story.
Exactly.
Okay. The word liability sounds kind of abstract. Can you give a real life example for condo owners?
Yeah, so liability is going to cover anything that you're responsible for if you damage someone else's stuff. Biggest thing in condos is water. You leave the sink running, you're on the 3rd floor, you have 2 units below you, and you go to work and you come home and, the fire department's there, everything's like that, because everybody's stuff's covered in water. You're responsible for everybody below you's damages. So having high liability limit is more important on condo policies than other policies.
So you take into account the floor that they're on when it comes to that as well?
Bottom floor, obviously having a high liability in the first place is a good idea. But if you're on the bottom floor, it's going to be a normal amount would be about $300,000 for that. If you're on the top floor, you got to take into account how much each of the floors are worth.
Underneath.
So if you're on the top, if you've got 8 floors below you, you might want a $1 million policy.
How does the HOA master policy impact what you recommend?
We don't want to overcover you. We don't want you to cover things that you're responsible for. Number one, when you're shopping insurance, premium is important, but also making sure that you're covering what you need to, not what you don't. So if the master policy is going to cover the roof, you don't have to cover the roof. You have a special HO6 condo policy for those specifically, rather than a home policy that covers the outside. So depending on what they cover, if they cover certain amenities, if they have certain deductibles, you have to have coverage for their deductible and yours. So you have to make sure you choose the correct one.
In Woodstock, Georgia, what is a loss assessment coverage, and do most condo owners need it?
If you own a condo with an with a master policy from an HOA, because you can own your condo and still be responsible for your roof, right? If you have an HOA that covers the exterior of your house and you're responsible for only the walls in, I highly recommend that anybody gets that coverage specifically for loss assessments. Even if you do own the roof, and there's shared amenities, like for example, right? Let's say you're on a street, your whole neighborhood's 13 houses and you're all attached, right? And let's say a storm comes through and rips off the entire roof, right? The outside is their responsibility, but they're going to come after the home insurance policies to share their deductible.
Home insurance policy?
Your condo insurance,
okay.
If you would. You're the owner's policy. So for example, on master policies, their deductibles range from $75,000 to $100,000, but they go after the homeowners insurance policies. Loss assessment coverage will cover your portion of the deductible.
Oh, so if y'all all have the shared roof, the roof rips off, the HOA doesn't cover it, y'all cover it, but then y'all all have to cover a certain section.
Your insurance will cover a portion of their deductible. So
Okay.
Instead of you paying for your own roof, they are going to cover the roof for you, but part of your insurance covers a part of their deductible.
Oh, interesting.
And if you don't have it, you're out of pocket. And if you have 5, if the deductible is $100,000 and there's only 5 buildings, your deductible is $20,000.
Oh, well.
So you can either finance it or make sure you have the right coverage.
Again, I guess it goes back to reviewing that master policy pretty in detail.
Making sure your agent understands what is required.
Does condo insurance cover floods in Woodstock, Georgia?
Flood is a funny thing. It's very specific. Flood is its own separate policy on 99% of any company's policy. Water is a huge claim thing when it comes to condos, but flooding is a very specific type. Water claims usually start inside out. Flood is from outside in. So flood insurance most of the time will be outside of that current policy. Specifically the Larson group, ours is outside. So condo policies don't cover flood specifically, but it will cover any damage that comes from inside out.
When would you recommend a flood policy for somebody in Woodstock?
If you're near any body of water, if you're on the bottom of a hill, and then there's no garage. You just walk straight in your house and you're at the bottom of the hill, all the water's gonna accrue by you. So that's important. Or if you are, if you do end up getting a mortgage and you buy a home and you get a loan, the mortgage company will tell you like, hey, you're in a flood zone. You need flood insurance. Then. But if at any point you think that water can rise above the level to arrive into your home, flood insurance is important.
What about storms and wind? Are those covered for condo owners in Woodstock?
It is covered, yes. So in Woodstock, we'll cover any kind of wind damage, storm damage. For condo policies cover your stuff inside. The HOA master policy will cover the exterior. So for example, if the roof was ripped off, the HOA will be responsible for replacing the roof, but the HOA will not pay for your flooded property, your soaked TVs, your ruined kitchen, your ruined walls. Your policy is responsible for anything that happens on the inside.
Now, be specific on that, because typically if a roof gets ripped off, there is water damage.
Correct.
But what is that going to be covered under?
Both policies.
So
Your HOA will cover replacement of the roof.
That would not fall under flood because it was part of a windstorm, essentially.
Are you sure? Because it's outside in.
Bottom up is flood specifically. If it rains enough to flash flood, raise the water level 3 feet, and it goes into your front door, that's flood.
So what if a window breaks during a storm? And
That's water.
it's considered water damage?
It's just water damage. It's from a storm. Correct.
Okay.
Flood can't be in the sky.
Flood has rocks.
Unless it's
Okay.
a tsunami. That's I don't know if anything covers
Yeah,
that.
it's not going to happen in Woodstock,
Yeah,
Georgia,
but
right?
if a tree falls on your house, right, and it damages the roof, and you have a master policy, the master policy will repair their responsibility, which is the walls and the roof, the blocks. You're responsible for the inside. So although yes, they might put the roof back together so the rain stops, all your stuff is soaking wet. All your stuff is ruined. Now you have to replace your whole kitchen. The tree damaged your whole island. You got to replace that. That's on your policy.
Okay.
So although the water came from outside in, it didn't start ground up. So there wouldn't be flood. It'd be regular home insurance.
Now, at the Larson Group in Woodstock, Georgia, how do you help someone compare policies beyond just price?
Just making sure you know what you need specifically from your master policy, it's physical policy. Having their papers, having their documents, knowing exactly what they cover, what they don't. And then we'll go through that and make sure you have everything you need, nothing you don't.
In Woodstock, Georgia, are there any special considerations for renters of condos versus owners or anywhere else that you had seen?
So when you rent, you don't own anything but your stuff. So you would still get a renter's policy, absolutely, to cover your things inside that building. The actual condo policy will cover the physical building itself along with the contents, but you're only responsible for the contents because you don't own the building itself. So if anything were to happen, whoever's renting you the home or the HOA will cover any damages physically. You're responsible for your things. Your renter's insurance will cover that. Same thing if you are in a hotel style and you have people below you. Your renter's insurance liability will cover if you damage any of their stuff.
If somebody wants to get started with condo insurance in Woodstock, Georgia, who should they call and what's the easiest way to get a hold of them?
You should call the Larson Group. Email us, call us, walk in, hang out with us. We're happy to do whatever we can to help you guys out. Well, we're going to make it easy. Make sure, condos are one of the most complicated policies you can get because you either get too much coverage or not enough coverage. We're going to make sure we meet right in the middle where you have exactly what you need, nothing you don't, and then we're going to keep the price point in mind as well.